Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Hope you're doing well. If you watched the last video in the Open Monism series, be aware that I'm actually recording this new video straight after the previous one, but probably I will be publishing it with a few days interval to allow you guys to breathe and to take in all this content, with no pun intended, because we're going to be talking about the content of being today. Being as contents, also known as imminence, the shape of imminence, the shape of the content or the depth of it or the abstract concreteness of it being imminence, for the reasons that I explained in the previous video, so I'm not going to be returning to that. So now if we do eventually focus a little bit on this this aspect of imminence, which is again the specification of content. I'm not going to be constantly talking about content because it's kind of a boring word. I need it for my tripartite aspectual structure of being, because it is, like I said in my previous video, in a sense antecedent to imminence, which is only the way that we define the content. It is still more logical and more sort of even sensible for me to be referring to imminence in this video, but always keep in mind that when I say imminence, I am talking about the specification of what is fundamentally the content of being, which is one of the aspects of being which can be experienced. So what you see in this room, there's a lot of content going on. A lot of well, not a lot, absolutely everything that you're seeing is imminent. In fact, it is more than just imminence, it is presence. In Open Monism, I refer to imminence a lot, as you probably have noticed, for those who have been reading my my journal entries, my notebook entries. Perhaps imminence is the words that I use the most in my notebook. I feel like I am using it a lot, and maybe that annoys people a little bit, but it's just the way things are. I mean, I need to sort of really make it clear that the content of being is imminent. Presence simply means that the imminence that is the case as reality is actualized. So anything that is present in my environment, in the world, which is my environment, in the kind of grand scheme of things, what's present is what's event-based. It's facts that have been actualized into events and have congregated into unities of events. I am present. I'm also imminence, but I am also one of the faces of imminence, which is presence. And everything that you can see here is presence. For instance, if we talk merely about imminent reality, it is not a reality that is accessible to our senses, to our vision, to our hearing. For that to be the case, the imminence would have to be presence. In other words, it would have to be actualized, it would have to be concretized into events. But let's maybe just focus on imminence in general. Imminence, which is composed of facts, right? All the facts, all the possible facts that can together make up any possible world with any possible combination of state of affairs, any possible combination of events and unities of events, totality of facts existing, or rather being virtually in the immanent space, which is not like a space in the traditional sort of physical conception of the term. It's just like an abstract space, a little bit like logical space, you know. Immanent space is very much the same as logical space, but it has that like kind of additional texture, if you like, that it consists of all the logically conceivable facts that can be, you know. like you remember, reality provides the limits of that space. So beyond those limits, things are not immanent. We don't know what they are. But insofar as things are, they are immanent and they are logically conceivable. So any logically conceivable fact exists, or rather is, in immanent space. And that immanent space features facts that can have the quality, or can, basically can contingently be, or not always contingently, but can be actualized into events yielding states of affairs in the world. And there has to be a certain pattern, a certain structuring principle to the way in which facts are given into actuality. So they remain facts, but they are concretized as events, and they can be perceived by beings which are themselves unities of events. In other words, actualizations of facts themselves. But in order for me to give like a complete, full, and not confusing account of how that principle of actualization is delivered, I will need to first specify being's aspect of structure as open-groundedness, because open-groundedness plays a massive role in that. So be patient, I will eventually get to it, but for now what I need to do is talk about imminence, because I think I've been harping on about it and about being just about to describe it in the last few videos, and as usual I go in this very like spiraling circular fashion, always progressing but taking detours, coming back. This is like, it's not just a feature of how I function, but it's, or in terms of how I think and in terms of how I research things or ponder things or wonder about things, but it's also very much like the heart of how my investigation proceeds, as I have explained before. I since my target is being, which is slippery and cannot be captured, but rather just gotten close to as close as possible, the circular patterns are just ways of getting closer and closer to it. And this is how I sort of follow my particular kind of trajectory, what feels most natural to me and my method. I think the circular pattern of my research, my investigative research, is adequate to my method. It's organic to my method. But to talk about imminence, once I have said that imminent space is composed of facts, I have not completely exhausted my description of imminence. It would probably be the case that the next video will be dedicated to imminence also, because I will need a bit more time to dedicate to it. But what I can say for now is, through my existential phenomenological research and attempt at capturing what I experience as presence, because what I experience directly is not imminence, or rather it is imminence, but it is a particular sort of aspect of imminence, the present aspect, not the virtual. Like, we don't, as human beings, like as we will see at later points in the series, we can relate to virtuality in a certain way, virtual fact, but we cannot experience it directly necessarily. What we experience directly is presence, the presence of this bottle. You're familiar with my love for the Evian brand. What's present is this pen. What's present is myself, the poster behind me, the landscape outside, so I can report on those things. But since I know that presence is, in a certain sense, the face of imminence, is the same thing, experiencing presence can allow me, if I pay very close attention, in typical phenomenological fashion, I can sort of aim at starting to describe the sort of makeup of what I experience, So sitting still, a little bit like when you're meditating, sitting still and just trying to get a sense of what surrounds everything, presence, and trying to get to the core of what it is made of. So I'm saying that like everything that's around me is, at the end of the day, at a fundamental level, only the actualization or the realization or whatever way you want to call it, of a certain number of facts concatenating together as events. It's one way to describe presence, and it's the way embraced by Open Monism, saying that ultimately everything is factual, everything is facts, but some of them are realized, some of them are not. But those that are not are still virtually real. Well, what I want to say is that imminence, which I experience as presence, but I can work my way back to imminence itself, has, so far as I have found out, 5 main attributes. And I know that this is going to excite at least one reader that I'm familiar with, whose name is John. So hi, John. You often ask me about the attributes of imminence. I call them the 5 attributes. Well, from now on, I'm going to be talking about them. So for the next minute or so in this video, and then probably in the next video, for the entirety of the next video as well. So what are the 5 attributes of imminence? Well, the 5 attributes of imminence are really just qualities that I have arguably, or that I claim to have experienced directly about presence, which I can sort of infer, from which I can infer that it applies to imminence, since presence is only a face of imminence. It's only what we take imminence as you remember, the taking as is important in Open Monism from the point of view of experience and epistemology. So what are those 5 attributes? Maybe I will list them and then finish the video so that next time I'll be able to sort of start describing them, because I want to give a fairly exhaustive definition of each and every one of them so that no confusion is left hanging. One of the main issues of my current undertaking is really creating confusion by my new use of words. So, but let me just list them first for now, okay? First one is intimacy, right? Eminent attribute of intimacy. So keep it in mind. Intimacy, first attribute. Things are intimate. I am with them. Second attribute is what I call silent infinity. The situation, we see it, but there's so much about the situation that is part of it that we do not see. Maybe there is an infinite amount of things a seemingly infinite amount of things about the situation that we cannot see, and I call it silently infinite. For example, where this bottle was made, by who it was made, who worked on producing it, who transported it to where I bought it, etc. Is it part of our situation here, or is it not? In Open Monism, we say, yeah, it is part, but it's part of the silent infinity of the situation. It's silent, we cannot really see it. Maybe invisible infinity would be more correct, but you get the meaning of it. Third attribute, givenness. Every moment in this situation is progressing. We call it time, but in terms of imminence, I call it givenness, the constant giving of new fact. I just pronounced a sentence here. This is a new fact. Imminence tends to constantly give itself and never ceases to do that. Very important attribute of imminence. So this is the third attribute. Fourth attribute is foldedness. So by foldedness, I mean that imminence can be folded in a lot of different ways, meaning that the situation that I'm currently experiencing with you viewers is going to be folded in different ways according to how you experience it, how I experience it, how somebody else experiences it. And in our language, when we report on the situation, on what happens right now, we'll be expressing it in different ways. And this is the different folds that all capture the same thing, but we might not focus on the same folding. We might, you have something, you have like a piece of cloth, you sort of put it away in one of your shelves. Well, you might fold it a certain way, another way, and in a sense you could fold it in if at the microscopic level you could fold it in an infinity of different ways, or at least a very large amount. Well, this is, if you apply that to situations, they can be interpreted in many different ways, folded in different ways. So this is the quality of foldedness at the level of imminence. And the fifth attribute is what I call recursiveness, meaning that imminence, when it gives itself, is potentially, if it is of the second degree of recursiveness, which I will explain in a later video, is potentially always repeating itself in a different fashion. It can never be predicted where the situation will go. We can have an idea of where the situation will go from now on. You can think, okay, like the video is going to stop there at that time, maybe in a few seconds, but will it? In fact, it will. But recursiveness is this idea that like it's impossible to predict where the next moment will be. Okay, but I'll explain that in more detail later. See you guys.